Have you ever dreamed that we could have a civilization that will last for millions of years? So many people around the globe will doubt its feasibility, and to be realistic, the only way to prove its feasibility is by making it happen. In this video, we are going to talk about this unprecedented civilization and its feasibility, and what concrete actions should be taken to make it happen. When I was a young boy, I couldn't stop dreaming about changing the world and specifically making it a better place for humanity. I decided since then to change myself and my direct surrounding little bit at a time, so such changes can have a bigger impact. But are individual changes enough to change the world to create sustainable civilization that will last for millions of years? After all, what is civilization? According to Wikipedia, a civilization is any complex society characterized by the development of the state, social stratification, urbanization, and symbolic systems of communication beyond signed or natural spoken language, namely, a writing system. According to Webster, a civilization is a relatively high level of cultural and technological development, where the stage of cultural development reached a level at which writing and the keeping of written records is attained. Most studies agree that the four important characteristics of any civilization are harvesting energy resources, creating advanced system of government, creating advanced culture development, and adopting written language. In the early days, before agriculture technology was discovered, people relied mainly on hunting and harvesting dispersed quantities of fruits and vegetables that are randomly found on our planet. Those nomadic tribes that lived in that era had no stability in food supply. It's hard for us to imagine any civilization that existed before that time. Even when agriculture was discovered, according to some historians, it took more than 9,000 years to spread in large societies, what they are to be known, quote unquote, as ancient civilizations. Early communities used to settle next to rivers, since they provide a high supply of fresh water that are essential for the agricultural activities, which ensured sustainable supply of food. Nowadays, after enormous advance in technology, we still need energy not only to fuel our agriculture, but to power our transportation, mobiles, work, communication, and almost in every aspect of our life. We are so dependent on energy, and in my opinion, it's the most important factor for any civilization. After all what is said, no wonder to know that Nikolai Kardashev, in 1964, has categorized civilizations in 3 levels, to be known as the Kardashev scale. A type the Hrun civilization is able to access all the energy available on its planet and store it for consumption. Hypothetically, it should also be able to control natural events such as earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, etc. A Type 2 civilization can directly consume a star's energy, most likely through the use of a Dyson sphere. And for information, Dyson sphere is a hypothetical sphere that should surround our sun in order to harvest its energy. A Type 3 civilization is able to capture all the energy emitted by its galaxy, and every object within it, such as every star, black hole. They even introduce Type 4 civilization as able to harvest its universe, and Type 5 that is able to harvest multiverse. Seems to be far-fetched. The second characteristic of a civilization is to create advanced system of government, mainly a structure and authorities, including social stratification. The ancient Greeks were the best among those who gave definitions to the types of governments, and the most common government systems observed at that time are still valid till our current days, despite the difference in meanings between then and now. For example, democracy still have the same definition like before. Citizens govern themselves, yet it has now a different meaning than before. In ancient Greek, it meant that adult citizens could vote, except women and slaves, while its current definition deduces all adult citizens can vote. The most common types of government systems include democracy. In democracy, citizens govern themselves. This can be either directly by electing the government administrative team, or indirectly by electing representatives who will elect the administrative team. Of course, there are so many different examples of democracy in our current days, and one successful example is Finland. Monarchy. Power resides in a single family that rules from one generation to the next. A very good example will be Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Oligarchy. A group of powerful individuals, controlling country assets or wealth, form a group and rule over a nation. A good example of that will be USA. Aristocracy. A group of intellect individuals ruled by a small group of privileged individuals. Totalitarianism. A single party or leader exercises complete control. A good example of that is North Korea. Communist. Government controls the means of production and distribution. A good example will be China. Socialist. Government owns and controls major industries. Dictatorship. A single leader holds absolute power. Each society divides its people into categories based on socioeconomic factors like education, income, wealth, race, ethnicity, age, gender, occupation, etc. This will form a certain kind of hierarchy between the different classes of societies. This division may be intentional or unintentional. Some societies are open to allow people move between categories like the USA, while others are more rigid like India. An example of the categorization of ancient Egypt society, where at the top, the pharaoh as category 1, and on top of everybody, category 2 for priests and nobles, category 3 for traders, artisans, shopkeepers, category 4 for farmers, and the lowest category for unskilled workers. It's important to note that there is a relation between the form of government and the social classes, and in so many examples, the government might create an intended social class, like the cases of apartheid. The third characteristic of a civilization is creating advanced culture development. When a society harvests energy resources and provides enough resources to feed its population, individuals start to express their ability to fulfill themselves. This is where the culture is created. The interaction between people vis-a-vis their skills and knowledge starts to create social behavior and conduct norms, common beliefs, ethics, values, moral. This is how a unique culture is created and starts to be associated by the creating society. Refinement and sophistication in the style of life will start to be expressed in arts, music, song, poetry, dancing, sculptures, etc. It's important to note that technology plays a very important role in culture formation, and a modern example of that was the invention of the internet technology, which boosted the cross-cultural interaction among the globe and created common values for all humanity on this planet. The influence of culture is so enormous and shape other societies. One good example is Hollywood, that spread America movies worldwide even before the invention of the internet. The influence of culture is so strong and not limited to a certain era. We are still influenced by ideas from ancient civilizations. Examples are spread around the world in festivals, marriage celebrations, religious rituals, army formations, etc. Though we have common values and beliefs, still in each society, every single human is unique and perceives the culture in his own way, yet remains compliant with the majority in most cases. Though money appears to be the main driving force on our planet, and logic is the scientific approach for making decisions, individuals behave according to their culture, beliefs, ethics, morals, knowledge, and conditions. This is why it's hard for us to understand some people's illogical behavior. Those behavioral norms can be either good or bad for humanity and will be transferred from one generation to the next and become social behavior without worrying about the reasons why they were used in the first place. One of the examples is shaking hands. Whether religious sign or peace assurance, it might be devastating in case of pandemics, and it gets people closer in normal days. One thing for sure, culture shaped the refinement of human beings and modified their behavior tremendously throughout our history and became directly correlated to civilizations. When two people resolve their differences or conflict by dialogue, discussion, negotiations, rules of laws, justice, we say they behaved in a civilized way compared to the barbaric and brutal way of resolving conflicts by force, aggression, fight, injustice. The fourth characteristic of a civilization is adopting a written language. The biggest advantage in our world is the knowledge we acquired and the interaction of this knowledge. But more important is the ability to pass this knowledge from a generation to the other generations. And this is made possible because of written languages. Writing ensures that information, innovations, culture, and ideas are communicated across time and space in a unified clarity. It reflects professionalism and consistency in communication, and most of all, it builds accountability, which in turn creates trust between the members of society. Writing was important for trade and inventory, but was more crucial to the rules of law because it helped create the first legal text around 1750 BC, which is a great leap in the milestones of humanity. Writing was a great power that so many rulers feared, and especially when the printing press was discovered. Nowadays, writing has evolved to a more complex form of recorded communication, where a two-way interaction of recorded documentations takes place. So not only you can communicate your ideas, but you receive feedback from people about those ideas. Social media is one good example where we have taken the power of recording our knowledge, ideas, and culture to a new level. Now that we have visited the characteristics of civilizations, let's observe how we perceive civilization. Examples of civilizations are many: Sumerian, Chinese, Indian, Inca, Aztec, Greek, Roman, Egyptian, Arab, Ottoman, Dutch, French, British, American, and plenty of other civilizations that rose and declined throughout history. Philosophers, historians, and scholars talk about cycles for civilization, from rise to decline. Some link those cycles to the systems of governments. Others talk about timely cycles of around 250 years as average lifetime for each civilization. In the year 331 BC, Alexander the Great, ruler of the Macedonian civilization, has defeated the Persian civilization in a remarkable historic battle in Gaugamela. This is one incident in history where we refer to as the rise of the Macedonian civilization and the decline of the Persian civilization. Alexander tolerated local customs and appointed many Persian administrators who continued to practice their culture, customs, habits, clothing styles, and ways of living. So the characteristics of civilizations are still there. The major change was the ruling emperor, Alexander the Great instead of Darius III. Therefore, the Persian civilization did not decline, but the Persian Empire failed. Some may argue that Macedonian civilization has inherited the Persian civilization, but in all cases the legacy of the Persian civilization did not vanish, and the civilization itself did not decline, but had a new rebranding, if we want to give it an appropriate name. Though in other instances of conquests, the new rulers try to eradicate the conquered culture by burning their libraries and destroying their identity, still the influence of culture is extremely strong irrespective of the written records. It's in many cases a strong belief, and it's extremely hard to break somebody's belief and especially a society's belief. In our days, so many people are still practicing the rituals of the Aztec society. However, in all cases, the new rulers influence the conquered culture, and this impact may be very substantial in many cases, like the conquest of Constantinople in the 14th century year, 1453. Both the Persian civilization and the Eastern Roman civilization did not decline, and we can see their cultural influence across the globe in our current days. Thus, the way we perceive civilizations is more related to the center of power, or the superpower. And when we talk about a civilization decline, we rather mean shift of power from a society to another. But the characteristics of the civilization evolve and do not decline. despite the focus of culture may be shifted from one capital city to another. Apart from the Neanderthals that roamed the earth for 350,000 years, and due to lack of information about them whether they built a civilization or not, we can clearly say throughout our known history there is only one civilization on our planet, which is the human civilization, and this civilization has excelled in so many environments in the past, including the previous superpowers. And this human civilization is currently excelling across our globe by many societies, including the current superpowers. Our stress on the superpowers is not because they provide more refinement, but because they manipulate the energy resources and the global economy and affect most systems of governments on our planet, which in turn affects the culture. In brief, currently we have one human civilization with multiple center powers that have been clashing throughout our history to take control of the important resources. This civilization is divided into several societies that acquired so many common characteristics, which are the essential ones in forming our human civilization. Outside politics, the only characteristic of civilization that is not applicable to the human civilization is a form of government to manage our civilization. But again, the term of Western civilization doesn't have a form of government. Rather, they have political alliance, which is temporary and conditional. In 1919, after World War I, and after the death of 40 million people, the political world has gathered and agreed to have the League of Nations, and its objective was to prevent war through collective security. Despite its injustice in dealing with the losing parties, if this political covenant was applied as claimed publicly, we would have witnessed the formation of the first global government for our human civilization. Yet on the contrary, the political system has led us into a bigger war in 1939, where we lost around 85 million souls. We all agree that nobody wins in a war, but we still go to war frequently. We learned in school that the Allies USA, USSR, Canada, Britain and France won the Second World War against the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, Japan. Well, in fact, even politically, Britain and France did not win this war because the war transformed them from superpowers to normal countries. Politically, the two countries that won the war and become superpowers were USSR and USA, and they have paid a price of 27 million dead for USSR and 450,000 dead for USA. So even though the USA and USSR won the war, they have lost millions of lives in exchange for a temporary political power or dominance. The USSR superpower failed in 1991, and so will the USA superpower. Switzerland, on the other hand, did not go to war. They chose peace and managed to bravely succeed in defending their country among all invaders, so they were the most civilized in that war. As this endless game goes on and on, we are most likely about to witness major conflicts across the globe between superpowers that are trying to strengthen their power, or in other terms, reaching high in their greed at the expense of others' needs. The next global war is not going to be like the previous ones. It's going to be unpredictable and devastating, and there is no guarantee that the nuclear arsenal of the superpowers will not be used. Scientists at Rutgers University estimate that a third of the population will be wiped out in less than 2 years, and this involves less than 3% of the nuclear stockpile on the planet. Others suggest a more devastating outcome. 2/3 of the population will be wiped out in less than 72 hours. In all cases, the next global war chances are getting higher each day, and death tolls will be in billions. The expected survivors are not the city-concentrated population, but more the remote areas that are living far from modernity, since they have higher survival skills, and they can adapt more to a changing environment. We might lose our recorded history, our culture, and this is when we can say for the first time that human civilization has declined. Our human civilization will be the Atlantis of the future. We are currently facing unprecedented challenges that could destroy our human civilization, and important actions need to be taken to avoid decline. The first challenge is artificial intelligence, and it is the most critical one. This magnificent invention is unprecedented, and for the first time, an advanced reasoning and decision-making entity beyond humans is taking place on our planet. It's the most critical because it might initiate a nuclear war or deadly pandemic, massive human brainwashing, or other sorts of catastrophes. The second challenge is justice failure. Justice is failing within countries where rich people are getting richer and poor people are getting poorer. The justice is failing among nations as well. Currently, we have around 60 conflicts across the globe. Some of the conflicts do involve countries possessing nuclear power. Decisions of the international justice are being ignored by the Security Council. That is not all. The levels of injustice are on the rise among powerful nations and within nations themselves. The third challenge is pandemic. We have suffered a lot of fatalities during COVID-19, even though COVID is not a devastating pandemic, and the death rate is much below 1%. If we are faced with a new pandemic with high mortality rates, the results might be devastating. The fourth challenge is global warming, and this is growing each year and is becoming more damaging across the world. The California fire is one result of this phenomenon. The financial loss around the globe due to global warming was around $184 million in the 70s. Now it's exceeding $1.5 trillion. This is a very dangerous challenge since it may affect global resources and may lead to famine and instability. The fifth challenge is outer space, and more important than our global warming, but lowly probable to happen. There is a 1 in 100 million chance for us to be hit by a massive asteroid that causes human extinction. And since this happened nearly 66 million years ago, the probability of being repeated is growing each day. There is even less probability of being attacked by more technologically advanced civilization. How to face these challenges? Good politicians can make a lot of differences. One of the good examples is Emperor Justinian I, since he strengthened the rules of laws and even took the legal system to another level. That legal system still has its influence all over Europe. Another good example is Nelson Mandela, who ended apartheid in South Africa and promoted reconciliation, which had a positive impact on human rights and even justice on a global level. In the year 2000, Al Gore lost the presidential election in the USA. Global warming would have had less impact on our humanity since he would have taken that subject more seriously, as it's clear in all his presentations and speeches. If we had good politicians across the globe, we would have resolved most of these challenges. But unfortunately, we are currently witnessing a great decadence in the levels of politicians across the globe, and the bad news that they are holding the major keys of changes. Our global political system is still primitive and barbaric. Imagine each person has a weapon to defend himself. Of course, some will use this same weapon to attack others. This is so absurd and is called barbarism, and far from being categorized under any advanced form of government, and consequently has nothing to do with civilization. Luckily, it's not our case, but it's similarly absurd to accept that each state or country has its own army, and can use this army as they feel like. By practice, the Security Council is failing to prevent wars, and these are the first signs of a global conflict or a new world war. Political actions to make a change are somehow trivial. Nevertheless, here are some thoughts in this regard. Initiate an immediate exercise of peace and reconciliation across the globe to make peace in fighting areas and reconcile between people that survived past conflicts. This seems to be a feasible exercise unless superpowers' hypocrisy with their citizens is elevated. This is a lengthy exercise and can be extended into redefining the state borders of the whole world according to economic, demographic, referendum, and ethnic criteria, to a minimum of 1,000 states to start convincing world states to spend their wealth taking care of their citizens. instead building domination dreams that will last for a few decades and return with devastating results on the human societies. This is a far-fetched objective because the superpowers have contradictory objectives. However, this is essential in starting a global disarmament process and migrate the nuclear arsenal into a global forum that will act as the police between the states and defend Earth against outer space challenges and ensure creating a backup habitat for humanity outside our planet. This forum will be controlled by the rules of international justice, states vote, and people vote, depending on the nature of action. That is the time when we can really claim that we are civilized. The veto right in the Security Council must be cancelled, and this council must be driven by the rules of international justice and not by countries' crazy agendas. Yet there is a clear contradiction between the increase in influence of the superpowers and this action, so it's unlikely to take place. A forum of superpowers must be found to standardize the AI industry and keeping it under control. Make a global health team to prevent pandemic and diseases. Set higher objectives for the global warming and strive to reach these objectives. And finally, make a special mission to deal with outer space challenges. The current forums we have like G7 and G20 are failing to decrease the global warming impact on our planet, as per the set objectives. Even though these objectives are not sufficient in the first place. Many would agree that we are facing unprecedented, dangerous challenges that might destroy our civilization. Nevertheless, still practice politics in the conventional way. The above reforms seem impossible to happen because countries, allies or foes, always fight each other by economy, military, intelligence, deception, scams. The end justifies the mean Machiavelli legacy to the fullest. It takes a lot to start building trust between nations. The start of this exercise had better be from the soft powers, despite their inability to make it happen. But they can create the first momentum. Nevertheless, little hope in that since their leaders are either unqualified, submissive to superpowers, or insecure in power due to the financial situations in their countries. Once we restore the trust gap between nations, and at least between allies to start with, we can start taking actions to contain the AI challenge by taking appropriate measures to make it help humanity, and mostly by standard regulations across the globe, stressing on the moral and ethics in the decision-making process, and orienting all objectives towards preserving and excelling humanity. Thankfully, many corporates are supporting the humanitarian organizations. Yet the giant ones that can financially boost humanitarian projects to another level keep themselves aligned and with the political system. The biggest resort for humanity is a system that is already in place, but not empowered enough. It's the human organizations that have little power, yet they accumulated a lot of knowledge throughout the human civilization history and strive to save human lives across the globe by challenging the political system and raising the public awareness. And now it's time for us as human to start relying on these humanitarian organizations and support them, and even push them to resolve our critical problems. Finally, human civilization has matured in harvesting energy resources, creating refined culture, and recording its activities. Still, creating an advanced global government system for humanity is indispensable, and one way to start doing that is by creating awareness among people and relying on humanitarian organizations to start pressuring the political bodies in our globe, hoping to be able to increase this awareness and start making changes before being dragged into a global war. Our big fear that there is no other way for our civilization to survive unless implementing such reforms, and despite relying on the humanitarian organizations, we still hope to have good politicians and good businessmen that can benefit humanity from our lessons learned in history and avoid venturing into a new costly lesson that might decline our civilizations, or at least cost us billions of souls and leave lasting scars in our human history records.